the EVIN 2022 Power Panel 2, this is truly the right time for an action plan. And the plan that our next panel will discuss is, for the next 3 years, what is the role of the government, the component players, automakers, dealers, FIs, and tech companies for an EV revolution. Our panelists are Mr. Sameer Malhotra, Director and CEO, Shriram Automall. Yes, Mr. Malhotra, please do come forward. Mr. Malhotra has established Shriram Automall India as one of the most trusted brands for the sale of pre-owned automobiles, with an online-offline offering, establishing 100+ automalls across the country. Our very own WAF star, Mr. Malhotra, has been awarded Best Chief Executive Officer, Auto and Mobility Tech Companies at the 8th WAF Awards 2021. He was also awarded Personality of the Year in the pre-owned automobile industry, an outstanding contribution to pre-owned automobile industry at the Nationwide Awards in 2021. Before establishing Shriram Automall India Limited, he worked as the country manager and director, Asia Subcontinent, for Ritchie Brothers Auctioneers, RBA. Please also welcome Mr. Ranojoy Mukerji, automotive and lifestyle writer. With experience in strategy, policy, and business development, primarily automotive, and electric vehicle space across Asian and Euro, Mr. Aneja has handled a wide variety of roles and assignments, including growth strategies, investment planning, merger and acquisitions, business development, and B2B partnerships across a number of geographies in India and abroad, giving him a holistic overview of modern business. In the auto EV sector, including corporate, consulting, and government assignments, he has majorly worked with the senior-most levels. Welcome, sir. Please also welcome once more Mr. Anuj Guglani, CEO, WAF Group.
Check.
Over to you, Anuj.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Really appreciate. So, as they say, that the post-lunch session is normally the graveyard session, and there's a medical reason, physiological. Our blood supply gets diverted to the stomach for food digestion. So we need to wake up. So, because now is the action time. All right, we already discussed the innovations part, what we need to do in the next 3 years. Now it's action time, because WAF is all about dialogue to action. And there's one wildcard entry. If we can also request Mr. Dilip Chenoy to please join us, the former Secretary General of FICCI. He is Industry Authority. यहाँ से उनको मैं So Chenoy sir doesn't need an introduction, but still for those who are a bit ignorant, he's the former Secretary General of FICCI, former DG of SIAM, and of course he is the former MD of NSDC. That's how the skilling revolution started in the country. So thank you so much, sir, for accepting our invitation. So if we can just show the panel topic again. So this is in action mode. We have to speak how all the different stakeholders are coming together for an EV revolution. So our time period stays the same, 3 years. What is the role of the government, component players, the role of the tech companies, startups? Can you please put that back, please? Auto dealers, automakers, fintech companies for an EV revolution. So we would like to begin with Samir. Samir is the CEO of one of the largest used vehicle platform, auction platform. And in fact, during the lockdown, they had done so many digital, the e-auctions as well. And one of the authorities in used vehicles across the country. So Samir, when we talk about the consumer confidence, the consumer sentiment on EV, whether it is new or pre-owned, well, EV pre-owned would be a very small number. But at the ground level, what is the sentiment of the EV consumer? And based on the discussion we had on innovation, what do you feel is the concrete action plan, concrete action steps required for an EV revolution in India in the next 3 years?
Thank you, Anuj, and thank you, WAF, and thank you all the people who attended today, and also all the dignitaries standing and sitting here. I think it's a very, very interesting topic right now. If we talk about in India, out of the total manufacturing of 100%, we are only doing EVs around 2.5%, and it's the most hot topic in the country. 97.5% almost everybody's forgot about to talk about. So that's very, very interesting scenario right now. But that's exactly is the future of this country and future of this sector. That everybody's focused, whether it's the government, whether it's the manufacturers, whether it's the dealerships, everybody is talking, and innovations, everything is happening around it. So we also at Shriram Group, we also focusing and seeing what exactly can be done. We basically look into this complete business into four parts. So first part could be manufacturing side, like what are the different things happening around it? What are the innovations required around it? I saw the Tesla presentation 2 days back when they were presenting to the board. They are talking about further reduction in the sheet metal. So you can imagine what will happen to the sheet metal companies in the country or all over the globe. Already how much they are using and further reduction they're talking about. So that kind of innovations are coming. So it start with that from the manufacturers. What are the innovations, whether it's talking about battery, what kind of batteries are required, what will be the life of that, how we can reduce the overall cost of EVs for people to afford. So that could be the first part of problem or future solutions which everybody from the industry, everybody has to look into. I think second part is how to afford it, whether there is a dealerships who are ready to adopt it, whether there is a viable business model for them right now ready. We have saw recently there are companies which are coming up with the multi branch dealerships concepts are coming in the country now. First time, two-wheeler already started. We might see the other segments also it will change. So that could be the second scenario where things will change and adaptability in the way we work in the country will change. And third is coming when we talk about how to buy it. Then it comes the role of finance companies and insurance companies, and both are yet to find a right place for them. Finance companies still yet to feel whether this is the right product for them to finance, how to do it. Insurance companies still struggling whether what could be the damages they can pay on that, whether it's all about the battery price and battery whether it's covered in the insurance or whether it's only in the accident time we have to pay, what is the overall price of the vehicle, how to value the vehicle price. And then the last part comes when we talk about the after sale, whether dealership after sale, whether it's all about battery maintenance, is all about how to maintain it, how to charge it, what is the fastest way. Whether we saw so much consumer mind, there's their struggles are happening. They are not too sure whether the battery can be charged, it will be good enough for running in the city, or whether we can run it all across the country, whether there could be any damage to the life, whether it's risky for us or not. So those kind of questions are coming, which I think again industry need to address and we need to work, and everybody is working towards it. And the last part comes on the salvage prices. So whether strong resale price of these vehicles will be there, whether anybody will be willing to buy, whether it's all about the battery price, is all about the overall vehicle price, is all about the technology. So I think everybody's working towards it. We at SAMIL, we are definitely working towards the last part of it. We already done over 300 transactions in such a short span. Most of the 80% was cars. We had got good prices. The acceptability of EV is definitely getting better. People are accepting it. Two-wheelers are getting accepted. We have sold a lot of, from the plant, we got a lot of demo vehicles. We got also some of the repo vehicles. We also got the used vehicles. So we started getting into that market. But still a long way to go. Everybody has to put their bit into this, and same is for us. And we are trying our bit into this. So thank you. That's
so
all.
the last point that you mentioned, actually, I thought you'll mention it as the first, the salvage value, because yours is essentially a pre-owned vehicle auction platform. So when a customer comes and says that, hey, I am not feeling confident the way battery prices are dropping, if I buy this vehicle now, a brand new vehicle, what is the guarantee on my resale value a few years down the line? And so when those vehicles come to you, does that have an inherent customer advantage, or customers still are in the wait and watch mode?
I think this is a long way to go for us as an industry, for us, everybody, because manufacturer yet to testing it still. Not much model, not much experiences are available right now. We are also testing, we also don't know. Financiers don't know, insurance companies don't know what is the right value. It's right now the testing mode, it's more on the perceived value. But I think a lot more to be done by manufacturers in this. It will be the game where how much manufacturers feel, what will be the support price, how strong the resale value of these vehicles should be in the market. That will definitely will go in a long way, and that will push all the prices. But right now, because of it's EV is a hot cake. So I just said 2.5% sale, and every country, everybody is talking about EV only. So with same way goes in the used vehicle, everybody is interested to buy and own EV because they feel this is something real, something different, something good. And if you get a right bargain at a right price, people are willing. So we sold 300 vehicles in last 1 year, and that's very, very easily we sold, and it was not a very difficult job comparatively. So far our experience is good, but I think very long way to go. The kind of market it is yet to mature.
All right. So taking a cue from that, that's a very long way to go. So Ron, getting you in the conversation. So as you also asked the question in the earlier session, what will happen to the grid once we are all electrified in mobility? So different form factors, we have here as Q, we have the electric bus, we have the e-rickshaw, which is an inadvertent EV revolution of the country. Then of course we have the electric scooter, around which there are a lot of issues of batteries exploding. Then of course we have the electric car, which has affordability issues, range anxiety, and many other related issues, lack of battery swapping as of now. Where do you think the entire electric mobility piece is heading, how it's panning out? What are the few caveats you feel which are important for the automakers, dealers, and the policymakers?
Thank you, Anuj. I'd like to thank everybody here and everybody who's listening in. To start this entire conversation, I would like to go back a little in history. I mean, where were we regarding electric vehicles 5 years back? Nowhere. 10, 15 years back, one heard that BHEL is doing some electric buses in the Chandni Chowk, Red Fort area. That's where were the origins. Look at it now. Now, I think that the revolution is not going to come in from the four-wheeler area so much, or in the, let's say, buses and other commercial vehicles. I think the revolution starts at two-wheelers and three-wheelers. What we generally talk about is last-mile connectivity. Already one has seen that in metro cities where your metro systems are there, and this thing, it's the e-rickshaws which provide you last-mile connectivity. Go to smaller towns, e-rickshaws are all over the place. Yes, there are concerns. That's why you see many of them running at night without lights, because they fear that the battery range will come down, or they don't use a horn. But, these are early days. Look at companies, there are big companies, and I won't name them, who have taken up electric two-wheelers as their last-mile delivery, whether it's a Pizza Hut franchise, whether it's Domino's, this revolution is real and it's coming. Of course, more cars are also the next the progression in this. But what happens in cars? In cars, still, the cost of entry is very high. Even for a basic Tata Nexon today, you're paying close to 15 lakh rupees, which is a premium of, say, 5 or 6 lakh rupees over the basic ICE model car. Whether it is a battery, whether it is the motor, these costs are coming down. New technologies like graphene, etc., are coming up. But you know, everything in this industry is something that changes in a day, in a night, in a minute. But still, the entry cost is very high. There is a range anxiety. Although a lot of manufacturers today are claiming a 3, 4, or a 500-kilometer range, real-world test shows that not many of them manage over 200 kilometers on a single charge, full charge. So what does that tell us? That means that number one, you're limited to using a car within city limits. You cannot take it to any place which is, say, from a Delhi to a Jaipur or a Delhi to a Chandigarh also for that matter, without having to charge it. On some vehicles you probably can, on some vehicles you can't. Also, premium cars are there, but then premium cars are all in the 1 crore plus bracket, and that is not affordable to most Indians. So what do we need to look forward to? We need to look forward to technology that is affordable. Battery swapping. Battery swapping is a major thing, but then there is no standard for a battery, you see. Every manufacturer has a different concept of a battery. Every vehicle has a different mounting, different type, different voltage rating. So how far can you homologate all of this together remains a challenge, because a battery from one vehicle will not fit into another vehicle. So how many types of batteries do you store? What inventory do you carry? Quick charge stations, there is a concern there as well. In India, we are using 50 kilowatt DC chargers as our quick charge stations. And internationally, that is probably the smallest or the lowest point you can get, because outside India, they are gone to 150 kilowatt DC chargers. And these chargers charge a car in 15 to 20 minutes, which is somewhat near, let's say, you're filling a car with conventional fuel. But today, to go to 0 to 80% on most cars using a 50 kilowatt DC charger, you need an hour. An hour is a long time to wait. Of course, there are other alternative technologies. Dilip also is very fond of hydrogen cars. But see, hydrogen again is a technology which is a very debatable thing. It's a very good technology. Ministry is using it. But then hydrogen cars are very expensive at this point. The filling process is very difficult at this point. A lot of other comebacks on this. But if we come back to an electric car, an electric bus, for example, the Delhi government has been introducing electric buses. Chandigarh has got a lot of electric bus fleets. A lot of other cities in this country are introducing electric transportation. But then it brings me back to my question, which I asked earlier today. What happens when you plug everything into the grid? Now, I agree that there are arguments that there is an off-grid time, off-peak time and a peak time, but then you are charging at some point, and if all of this power is in private power hands, your cost of charging is also very high. Now, there has to be, we have seen incidents where batteries have been affected, we have seen incidents where vehicles have caught fire, unfortunate incidents where somebody sleeping at night unfortunately lost their lives for no fault of theirs. Now, how do we regulate this? Yes, the government is coming up with standards. Yes, the government is doing a lot. But then there is not enough R&D that is going into this. So we need to be very clear that a product has a development life cycle. And we need to go into that life cycle. You just cannot arbitrarily bring in products. You cannot buy something that is made at one place, integrated with a battery management system made at another place, put it into a body which you make at home locally, and then say, hey, you have an electric two-wheeler. No, it doesn't work like that. The days of Henry Ford are gone.
So Ron, taking a cue from that, what do you feel should be the government's role at this point when you have all these gaps and loopholes and loose ends to be tied?
So I'll come to what the government needs to do, but I think I must point out two things which the government has done very well. Number one, the road infrastructure in this country is improving dramatically. That will give a big fillip to even the range of electric cars, because, and I'm talking about the driving range, because the better the road, the better the drivability, the more range you get out of it. Number two, I think the charging infrastructure in this country is coming up beautifully. Whether you go to Delhi, whether you are in Gurgaon or many other cities, the charging infrastructure is fantastic. What needs to be done? What needs to be done is there needs to be a very strong regulatory framework so that it is safe, because electricity is not something to be played with, you know. It is like they say in fire, it can be a good servant, but it's a bad master. So there needs to be very strong regulatory framework regarding electric vehicles, regarding standards, regarding battery swapping. You need to have more charging stations up so that you get rid of range anxiety, and you just need to bring the industry together on one page in a roof.
As simple as that.
As simple as that.
Great. That's fantastic. So switching gears, so coming to Dilip sir. So Dilip sir has ringside view of the industry. He has been in the industry for so long, and he has insights in every company, what they've been doing, what their plans are, the government interactions. Dilip sir, you've set up NSDC. So skilling, as we discussed in the earlier panel too, is a very important cornerstone for the EV revolution. According to you, what you feel are the important areas for all these stakeholders, the government, the auto industry, the tech companies, and so forth?
So thank you, Anuj. And I didn't come prepared for this.
You're always prepared, sir.
But great listening to the views. I was hoping I'd get in after him, so I'll have something to contribute. But I think first we are missing the point, right? Why are we going EV, right? So we're going EV because we find that there is, traditional ICE vehicles do three things. They pollute, they congest, and they kill. So accidents, right? Okay. So now in the whole mobility space, the EV is only addressing one point, which is the pollution, right? So, and what you're doing is, if you look at complete life cycle, pollution, and you're using coal-fired electricity, you're actually shifting the goalposts and shifting where the pollution is actually happening. So, once the whole ecosystem comes to understand that what you're trying to solve are three things. You're trying to make the road safe, vehicle safe, right? You're trying to avoid congestion, and you're trying to go sustainable and reduce pollution, right? Then the whole game changes. But the current focus is unfortunately too narrow on EV. And what will happen is, supposing we replace entire fleet today by EVs.
Overnight, assuming.
Will congestion go away? No. Will accidents go away? No. In fact, in a lighter vein, I thought Ranojoy might actually say this, but if you go back when cars were first introduced in the world, might sound funny, but there was a guy with a bell who went in front of the car. Second, no refueling station was allowed within the limits of the town. They were all, at least, and then interestingly, first petrol came in, but diesel was still kept out. And that's why, petrol, so every type of technology goes through the same cycle, safety, usage, whatever it is. So I think then you need to create this whole ecosystem. Now what is happening is that the ecosystem being created now is very different from the ecosystem being created in the past. So in the past, the OEs, right, controlled everything. Now you'll have a set of OEs who still want to control everything, and you have a set of OEs who will go in for partnerships. Current thinking, it may change, is that the ones who go in for partnerships are likely to actually find greater market share and all, because you are trying to expand market in an exponentially fast way. It is not, you take, let's say 10% currently. If you go to 20%, right? So if you look at one company, they're focusing on 10 cities. They're not going beyond 10 cities, right? If you take another company, they're focusing on 5 cities, 2 cities, some are going to 30 cities, 40 cities. But no one is actually looking at the whole country there, because they don't have capacity. And second, the dealer network and the whole network cannot go up here. So like I think what was mentioned, you might have a change in multi-brand retails, multi-brand this thing. And on battery swapping, and as many of you may know that I was a great advocate for battery swapping, we are missing the idea of battery swapping, okay? We are taking battery swapping with the preconceived notion of petrol and diesel, right? So battery swapping need not mean that you can take a, let's say, if I take a Maruti battery into a Tata car. That's not what we're talking about. Tata car, Maruti car should have swappable batteries with their own batteries, right? And once that happens, the Japanese perfected single minute die exchange. That revolutionized manufacturing. What about single minute battery exchange, right? And then you have all the network around it. So that is actually going to happen. then how do you increase penetration? I think the Delhi government thing of saying all the delivery, and you talked about delivery. If we say that all the delivery fleets, last mile fleets go electric in the next 2 to 3 years, then you're again transforming the whole thing. I think the fire and the other issues are transitory issues. We should not get, it's unfortunate, people are dying, but we need to, we should not throw the baby out of the bathwater. Right?
So we should get the house in order.
So,
take these
yeah.
as.
So, there's IEC technical committees are there worldwide looking at battery safety, the whole lot. We need to replicate them in BIS. The BIS committees need to get active. Industry needs to get active. Industry should not see regulation as preventing market penetration. Industry has to see regulation as promoting market penetration. And that's, the current, sometimes you look at, that regulation, it won't suit me, so let's oppose it. How do
Happens.
you need to look at it differently. And you need skilled people. People is the big thing, and it's very underestimated. Companies actually focus on people before they build plants, before they roll out the product. Why is it different for EV?
Fair enough.
You got to actually look at it in that way. And the industry has to come together. You either follow the example of the software industry, where the industry came together, no regulation from the government, and you developed, right? Okay. Here, there's no difference in safety regulation other than the battery, right? But if you look at crash testing, or if you look at lights, or you look at other things, in fact, the number of regulation touch points in an electric vehicle are far less than an ICE vehicle, right? So that's the way, and you have to actually get the whole ecosystem together. People are not getting ecosystem. I just come into, this is my fifth EV workshop I'm attending. I never spoke at anyone, you just got me here, but I'm just trying to understand, because people are not understanding. People are just, saying,
EV is a mad rush. So that's a very good point by Dilip sir, that a mad blind rush for EV doesn't make sense. We have to step back and get the holistic picture. We're talking here about sustainable green mobility. So that brings us to a very important question: how green is EV in its current avatar? So that's a very important question to be addressed. In fact, I remember at the NITI conference in 2019, two things distinctly. I think there was this promulgation by the vice chairman of NITI that by 2047, EV would be 100% powered by renewable. That was what they had set or taken as a target by 2047, 100th year of independence of India. And the other thing very interesting was, there was this panel on battery technology, this, that. I was there in the audience, and there were speakers from all over the world, from Europe, from North America, Latin America, Asia. So I just asked them something on battery swapping. And one of the gentlemen from Europe, he said, he asked me a counter question. Can you believe what that question was? 2019, September, when the conference happened, he asked me, what is battery swapping? So it is a very new concept, even worldwide. In fact, I would say probably India is taking a lead in this. And one of the leading EV players, I can name them, Bounce. Their founder shared with me the other day. This was last year, so they would have done many more now. Just in Bangalore city, they have done close to 300. They had done close to 300K battery swaps, effortless, seamless. Very enhanced productivity, profitability, turnaround time, customers happy. They were so happy that they launched a scooter based on battery swapping. Without the battery, you can buy for 36K, the Bounce Infinity. So these are new concepts, but they need to be stabilized, and we need to have an action plan. Otherwise, we'll be just running in every direction, aimlessly.
Anuj, on a lighter note, in 2009, there's a WP 29 in Geneva, which looks at automobile regulation. And they were talking of electric vehicle regulation. And the Indian delegation made a very simple point. He said, can we understand, can we have a common charging pin? Okay? So, they said, why? So if you look at different, US is a different electric, this thing, and if you look at mobiles, it's different. So and what is the difference between an automobile and a mobile, right? Now, an automobile, no matter where you go, the fuel tank size, the size may vary, the composition may vary, but
the
mouth,
nozzle.
right? And the nozzle are standard around the world. Right? Why can't it be for electric? That time there was a lot of laughter because, it was like 2008-9.
You were there in that conference.
Yeah, I was there in the conference. We used to take India team goes
delegations.
And in fact, India has got the reputation of actually changing a global regulation. There's a special India drive cycle. That time it was actually led by SIAM and the government of Ministry of Road Transport and Highways, where industry got together. Hydrogen, today the entire CNG fleet can be 8% hydrogen without changing anything. You just add hydrogen to the CNG,
true.
you can actually do it. The vehicles were tested way back in 2009 and 10.
There was an Indian oil pilot project.
Yeah, full. So there are ways of actually looking at it. But the issue again I come back to is congestion, pollution and safety.
So now we know why Mr. Adani and Mr. Ambani are so bullish on hydrogen.
But I would like to make a point. Dilip is absolutely right in what he says. But there is this very interesting study. There's this very interesting study on cafe norms and all at the University of California. So they say that even if your power is 100% generated with a thermal power plant, you still make substantial savings on pollution if you're using an electric car. And the second thing, Dilip, about the mobile charging thing, the world has moved to the USB-C charging concept, except Apple. Apple kept saying that we will not do it, but now they have confirmed with the next generation of iPhone, they're also moving to USB-C. So if they can have a uniform standard, so can the electric car industry.
A USB for the car, yeah.
Sorry about...
So now getting Dev in the conversation, I believe, so Dev, you all know he is leading the automotive mobility space at India Invest, doing a lot of JVs for countries all over the world and representing the face of India for international investments. So I believe Dev, you have a presentation too, short one? Yeah, please go ahead.
Thanks, Anuj. Pleasure to be here. And I'll make a small presentation on the kind of things we have been doing at Invest India. We'll talk about a few case studies. And finally, what sort of investment interest are we garnering from foreign countries from an EV sector perspective? So for those of you who don't know what Invest India is, we primarily are an investment promotion and facilitation agency under the Ministry of Commerce. The main mandate we have is to promote India's growth story to the rest of the world and then facilitate the investments of foreign companies coming into India. So we work with them right from the pre-investment stage to the execution stage to a post-investment phase wherein we work with them on various issues, any expansion support and so on and so forth. So think of us as a conduit between the government and industry stakeholders. From an auto EV perspective, our line ministry is MHI, Heavy Industries. So we work with the MHI ministry, we work with state governments, we work with Niti Aayog on things like representations from the industry, any issues they are facing, any policy advocacy efforts which the industry wants us to take to the relevant government authorities. We work with the state governments in terms of incentive negotiation for our corporate clients when we help them with their location assessment, selection of the right states, land parcels, what sort of incentives can they negotiate with the state governments. And we work with various think tanks on writing multiple reports on the sector. So we do a broad array of things and all of these things are on a pro bono basis, working for the government. I'll talk about two very specific case studies which are ongoing within our team, which have been ongoing rather for the last 12 plus months. One of those is from an American battery manufacturing company. It's setting up a gigafactory in India, 5 gigawatt hour plant, which will be its second gigafactory after the American factory which they are coming up with.
I think I know whom you're talking about.
Perfect. So it's a $500 billion project that they are bringing up in a southern state of India. So we are working with them for the past 12 plus months across areas of government affairs, business side of things, help them with location assessment, incentive negotiation from a couple of states, help them on strategic alliances in areas of R&D partnerships, supply chain, partnering with cathode companies, anode companies, off-take agreements with multiple OEMs in India, multiple stationary storage companies in India, their engagements with those prospective customers, helping them with recycling partnerships with companies like Atero, what Gaurav was mentioning earlier, helping them with a fundraise round for the Indian consortium from a Middle Eastern company, and further helping them with Indian joint venture partners across multiple sectors. So help them on a broad array of things, all of this on for the past 12 months basically. This is one specific case study which is still ongoing. And then second, a very interesting case study is from a Middle Eastern company. It's a traditional business house, $8.5 billion in turnover. It's a trading company, 50-year-old company present across multiple industries with a zero presence in manufacturing. They wanted to foray into manufacturing. They were flush with cash. They were looking for the right sectors to invest into, and India was, of course, a target market for them. But they had absolutely no clue on what's happening in India, which sectors are sunrise sectors, which would grow. So we have been engaging with them for the past 12 plus months, helping them understand the entire EV ecosystem, what sort of opportunities can be there, basis their requirements. We helped understand their investment hypothesis, what sort of ticket sizes they are looking to invest into, what kind of companies do they want to invest into, what sort of subsectors within the EV ecosystem will grow most basis their requirements, what sort of Indian companies will have synergies in the Middle Eastern area, which is where they can support them on their Middle Eastern expansion. So basis all of these multiple filters, we have been showcasing them opportunities through our industry connects. And as we speak, we have shown them about 10 plus opportunities in a ticket size of $10 million to close to $100 plus million. The largest one being for one of the cell manufacturing consortiums, which will come up in India. And right now, as we speak, this Middle Eastern company is doing advanced diligence on 3 of these opportunities. And hopefully, 1 or 2 of these will fructify to a logical conclusion in the coming weeks.
So one quick question here, Dev. When these foreign companies look at India as a investment, opportunity, as an investment, target, what is on their shopping list as far as EV tech is concerned?
So when we look at EVs, we split it primarily into 3 buckets. One could be vehicle manufacturing, one could be batteries, EV infra. Infra could mean charging stations and swapping stations. So broadly, 60% of our investment interest, which we are garnering, is either in the battery space or in the infra space. 60-65%. Balance 35-40% is more on the component side or maybe some bit on the vehicle manufacturing side. But mostly EV infra and battery manufacturing. And when we say battery manufacturing, it's prima facie cell manufacturing or key components from a PLI ACC perspective.
So people overseas are very clear. It's all about energy and battery.
Yes.
And at the cell level.
Exactly. In fact, a recent study from McKinsey came, which showed basically 5 areas, which is where we'll see maximum amount of global investments coming in. And in those top 5 areas, the first one was EV batteries. So worldwide, globally, batteries is one area which is where maximum R&D is happening, maximum amount of investments are happening. And just to give you some context, when we talk about some American companies like, let's say, QuantumScape and so on and so forth, those companies which are 5 years away from their first dollar revenue, they will be starting their revenue stream in 2026. 0 revenues for now, they are still at $50 billion valuation, which is more than the valuation of Ford Motors or General Motors in the US. So this is the action which is happening in the battery space.
How soon would this bubble last, according to you? If it's a bubble, quote unquote.
So of course, I mean, a lot of these companies will perish, a lot of this investment will perish, but the idea of these global investors, when they put money into these kind of companies, is that even if 1 or 2 of 10% of these companies survive, they will basically become the next Ubers and Zomatos of the world. So, but then these investors are pretty much ready that 80% or 90% of my portfolio companies will go bust. Okay. This is the rationale they work with.
Unless they're into battery and charging equipment.
Just one sec. All right. So this is just a snapshot of the kind of work. So just to put some context, Niti Aayog within the government ecosystem, of course, works on the policy design. Relevant ministries work on the implementation phase, and we as Invest India kind of we are a conduit between them in terms of industry consultation, industry feedback, and then promotion of all of those policies to the rest of the world. So just to put things into perspective, one example is PLI ACC, wherein we played a very active role in reaching out to the entire global ecosystem. We reached out to cell manufacturing companies across multiple parts of the world in terms of pitching them the PLI ACC scheme and the potential which India offers. We reached out to supply chain companies, which are prima facie super important when it comes to PLI, because 60% local value add is something which is very, very critical. Then it's a very, very capex intensive game. So a lot of global funds showed us a significant amount of interest from Europe and Middle East, who were willing to invest into these battery consortiums. So they are evaluating a few of those consortiums to be a financial investor per se in those consortiums. And then most of these battery cell manufacturing companies were looking for an Indian partner because India is not an easy market to do business with. So they were looking for a partner who has a manufacturing expertise, who knows how to run the plants, who can do government licensing, who can manage the labor, who can manage the taxation. So we started engaging with lots of Indian conglomerates across energy sector, auto sector, oil and gas and chemicals, because these were the sectors which were adjacent to the battery space, and these were the companies which were willing to explore battery manufacturing in India.
So they're talking about PLI, it comes once in 100 years that the entire space gets disrupted. If you take the automotive industry, the automakers, it's it's like oligarchy, You look at top car makers, look at top two-wheeler makers, look at top three-wheeler makers. It comes once in a century that, it gets disrupted. You have startups coming up and doing their innovation. Suddenly PLI comes and it's taken only by the big companies. So some way these startups feel that it's unfair towards them, the less SOPs for them. Something on that?
So see, PLI scheme definitely is focusing on the larger companies, definitely yes. However, there are other things for the smaller companies. For example, when we have battery swapping policy, there is no eligibility parameter, there is no net worth requirement which is where that only larger companies can participate. A lot of swapping players, swapping startups would be entitled to avail fiscal support on swapping. Then if I talk about battery manufacturing, Government of India is working on a niche PLI scheme, not the PLI ACC, an extension of this, a niche scheme which will focus on startups within the battery space, which do not have a cell manufacturing technology on a giga scale right now. However, the new age chemistries which they are working on have the potential to become giga scale in the next 5 to 10 years. So government is willing to support those sort of companies, for example, silicon anodes or aluminium air or sulfur batteries. So these kind of new age chemistries which will be homegrown, which have the potential to become big. Government is having no sort of net worth parameters or financial parameters, and there are very easy, no barriers to entry basically for these companies to come and start their operations in India with government incentives. This policy should be out.
Fair enough.
This is the last slide I have, which is basically a few themes, which is where we are seeing a lot of investor interest. While we speak, we as Auto Team of Invest India are facilitating investments worth $5 billion cumulatively. And of this $5 billion, about $3.4 billion is spread across cell manufacturing and EV infra, with rest going towards auto electronics and some auto components, prima facie from a PLI auto perspective, which these investments will actualize in the next 3 to 4 years. The $5 billion.
Would it easily be a 20-80, last three accounting for 80%?
Absolutely, more than 80.
More than 80?
More than 80, yes. More than 80, last three. The kind of foreign companies coming into India, more than 80%.
Fair enough. So I think that's a ringside view, friends. So for people watching here and also later on WAF TV, because a lot of people, the entire world will watch on WAF TV, thousands, lakhs, millions, let's see. So that's a very good insight. You don't get to see this every day. The videos might be on YouTube, but if you are here, makes all the difference. So, sure.
So just to amplify what said was that, the PLI scheme, right, had two objectives, right? So if you go back again, when you look at things outside of history, you tend to miss what was the intention. So if you go back to December 2019, right? At that point of time, it started with the pharmaceutical industry. The APIs, which India was very dependent, right? The supply chain got disrupted. And then by the time, the associations and all did some study, and we had the meeting on the 14th of February in Ashok Hotel with the finance minister, we found that 40 sectors were being impacted.
40 sectors were?
Being impacted because supply.
Okay.
So even you look at the paint industry, rutile, titanium dioxide, okay, right? Or if you look at the solar cells. So at that point of time, there was a shift from Make in India to saying, let's look at the different products which we are overly dependent on worldwide, and how can we get manufacturing in India? And so it was not
Atmanirbhar.
Not it is Atmanirbhar, but very important. How do we actually get here? If you look at what's disrupting the auto industry today is the supply chain.
True.
Right?
Absolutely.
Supply chain, no new cars, people are hanging on to the old cars, the second-hand market is getting disrupted. So I think that was the thought process behind this. And now, while you're talking of micro thing, I think what is missing here is, like the European Union has got the $50 million, challenge fund for particular stuff. I think we need a challenge fund now in India to actually do that against a PLI. So what will happen is, to your question, what Ray said was when you have these large OEMs, I won't use the word that you used because I can't pronounce this, too long a word for me.
I buy the reason.
So then that will allow the, anyone who's got the capability in a startup, if you go back and you see SpaceX, the movie on Netflix, right? You saw they actually, what is he fighting for? He was actually fighting to win the $1 billion challenge fund, right? So he invested and then he won that fund and then he got 2.5 billion more. So, I mean, that's the type of thing that we need now going forward in the ecosystem.
That's the vision, conviction, risk-taking ability, self-confidence in yourself, your team and the country somewhere. So it all comes together. Yeah.
And just one small comment, since we are talking of supply chain and batteries, I'll relate vehicles with gadgets, and more we are moving towards EVs. They are becoming more and more like gadgets, and when we buy a laptop, when we buy a phone, more important than the phone company is the chip company, because the performance aspects of the phone or a laptop comes from companies like Intel and Qualcomm, which are not exactly the OEMs. So in my personal opinion, going forward, battery companies which actually power a vehicle will become much more important than a vehicle company itself. It's going to be a shift in the entire trend, what we have been seeing for the past 100 years.
Talking about supply chain issues and cost escalation, why go far? You look at this program, this setup, this stage, this backdrop, this flex that we have behind us, the cost has gone up by 80%, 80, not 18. Just this setup, rupees per square, and as mentioned, I'm lucky. We have great partner like Chopra AV who helps us save the cost. But it's a fact. They do it for programs of Mr. Modi also. But for us, they have a special corner. The point is, the costs have gone through the roof. But what about the earnings? What about the revenue? If you are only into basic commodities, then you are ruling. If you are into logistics, you are ruling the world. But if you are into finished products, if you are into services, then your input cost is sky high. But what about your revenue and your sale? It's a big challenge.
Anuj, it's cyclical.
Sorry?
Right? It's cyclical.
Yeah.
Right? So if you look at 2002, the steel prices were going through the roof. Very simple. 2006, 2008, right? Now again, it's a thing. So, and of course, there's, geopolitics is also actually impacting it.
Absolutely.
And there's a direct correlation to the amount of attention that is paid to electric vehicles and the cost and availability of petroleum products. You can actually, you do something for the consultants in order to do a 30-year-old this thing, you'll see as the price of petrol kept on going up, the EV thing or alternate fuels went. And as the petrol prices dropped, so when you look at total cost of ownership, when you look at everything, that's what the industry needs to look differently. Again, it's going back to those 3 pillars that you need to address. If you don't address that, then you are...
Fair enough. So getting Sameer back in the conversation. Sameer, you are in very close touch, contact, association with the end user, with the customer. You know the market, you listen to the market on a daily basis. So when it comes to automobile, when it comes to mobility, you also do into farm equipment and other equipment. When it comes to EV, what is the current pulse of the market when it comes to mobility, when it comes to EV? What do you think the industry needs to do right now so that we are at better position next 3 years?
I think I started with that only. On the periphery, I touched all the things what is industry is supposed to do. And the interesting change what we saw recently, as I think everybody in the panel is talking about, is the total shift in the way industry is behaving. We are talking about more towards battery, who are going to manufacture over there. Even the Invest India, if you see, everything is focused, 80% is where? Something very different than the OEM and the setup of the plants and all. It's not about that. And that's trend we have seen recently. If you see last year, I think most of us knows or might not be knowing. The most advanced in EV is three-wheelers. I don't know how many of us knows. 47% new sale is happening three-wheelers is EV. Commercial vehicle is 0.3%. Tractor or farm equipment not even started. If you talk about two-wheelers, 2.5%. So, and passenger vehicle is almost less than 1%. So that's where we stand. But three-wheeler, and none of the original equipment manufacturers who were the market leader for last 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, they're in top 10. They're not even standing there. Same way in two-wheeler, hardly 15 to 20% sale of the old giants of two-wheeler manufacturing are in the top 20%. And you're talking about the total change in the market, how the things are changing and what's happening. So I think that's what exactly everybody is watching right now. It's not more, no more about a brand. It's about how affordable it becomes, how fast it is creating. Every new brand is coming and they're becoming a, see the valuations over there, see the investments over there. It's very, very different than the people in the industry for last 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 years. Their brand value or their company value is, for that business, is equivalent to the new startups value now. So, so those changes are happening. I think a lot of investment is going into this. We also, we're seeing the consumer is quite jittery about. There are so much questions in their mind right now. Same way for their, whether how much hours it will take for charging, where I should charge it, where will the station, how many of the societies or homes or places we have a battery charging right now or plug points over there. It's hardly anywhere. We are definitely quite positive, and we should be positive because this is the future of the industry and the country. So we need to be there, but I think a lot of investment, a lot of awareness, a lot of changes required by everyone. Consumer is quite confused right now because we only talking about EV, and that's in the market, in the service, in the places, in the way they can buy it is becoming much more difficult for them. They don't know who will finance them, how insurance will happen, how the service will happen later on, what will be the resale value, how they'll be using it, where they can charge it. So there are so much questions in their mind right now, whether I'm paying the right value, why should I pay 40, 50% more than the similar model which is already available? So what is the value addition I'm getting? Well, so these things are basically coming and helping. Also, a lot of people are working around it. I think everybody in the industry is working around it, including us. And it will happen.
I feel this in itself is a very positive notion, a very positive symptom that the people are asking so many questions about EV. That shows their interest level. It has come in their consideration set, which was not there 5 years back.
Absolutely. So I think that's a very good trend because as the government of India and everywhere the focus is coming on this segment and manufacturing, everybody was talking. So awareness level has gone so high that everybody feels 90% sale in India is happening of EV. And that's a good sign because ultimately it will happen one day. But right now it's a good sign, but it's definitely a long way to go.
Well, as I had shared in my introductory keynote, if you Google World Auto News, we are at the top. So we aggregate World Auto News from all over the world. So whether we are aggregating from international media agencies or from India, we also take out a weekly newsletter. It goes every Friday. It would have gone this morning. 80% is EV, but 80% sale is not EV, but 80% news items are EV. So surely there is a huge interest. There's a huge rush. But yeah, so probably money or business might follow. So here one question for you, Sameer, is that do you also auction batteries of EVs separately? Are you in that?
We are yet to, I'm expecting lot more manufacturing will happen in India and we'll have that also. But right now we are away from components. We don't do much there. We are too busy. Our hands are too full into...
Or EV without a battery? What is it?
So far, no. So far, very limited experience. So far, people already are so spectacle about what exactly will happen. So if we talk about without battery, nobody will pay me any price. They'll be just waiting the vehicle.
Your margin goes down.
Yes. So we need to be careful over there. But yes, alone battery is a very, it's possible. I'm not saying it's not possible. It will happen because that's going to be the major component of the EV industry. But right now, those concepts are too advanced and too new to the country.
Right. Fair enough. All right. So any questions from the audience? I know it's post-lunch, but still, I'm sure our discussions would have woken you all. Hello, am I audible? Or do we do a drill? Stand up, stand down. All right. Any questions? We can keep talking. We love to talk. Any quick questions? Quick meeting, some quick questions? I hope you've seen the quick booth outside. They are, leading meeting providers, offline and online. It's a fantastic app, must try. I'm an investor, by the way. I have to give my disclaimer. Okay, so I think we can just give our concluding remarks. Very focused, what we feel are the key action points for the government, the industry, and the startup community for a responsible, sustainable green mobility, electrified.
I think what is primary right now is regulation. There has to be a very good regulatory framework. Like Dilip also mentioned, that you need to look at a bigger holistic picture and not just why EVs are the ultimate solution, but you need to have a regulation in place so that fly-by-night operators and those who are trying to get in quickly into the industry don't just make a product that is unsafe and something that is there. Like he mentioned, you need to look at investments in battery technology. You need to, I think that is the prime thing. Chips are important. Again, taking a cue from what you said. Tomorrow's cars, bikes, everything are powered by chips. So there has to be a regulation as far as safety is concerned. There has to be a regulation on processing powers and all other related aspects of a EV, and I think that is the way going forward.
Fair enough. Dave, your closing remarks?
Sure. So from a government standpoint, I think we have a good amount of policies which already are there. Manufacturing incentives are there, demand incentives are there. More than 18 states have come out with their EV policies. Now it's time to have a proper integration between center and states. Now it's time to have implementation, execution of actual investments, actual manufacturing action, and actual support from the government in terms of any license, clearances. Things should not get delayed basically. From a center-state perspective, things should be pretty much aligned. And from an industry perspective, of course, we need to be much more responsible from a safety standpoint. While government will work on its standards, but then companies also will have to do their bit in terms of doing their proper sourcing of materials, proper design from an India perspective, which should be customized for Indian market conditions, not import from other countries. Proper testing, validation of vehicles in the Indian road conditions, so that we do not have instances, safety instances, which we have had in the recent past, because these kind of things take the industry back by a few years and definitely have a big impact on the trust factor of prospective customers. So industry needs to play their part, and government, of course, has done a lot what they had to do, and now it's more about integration between states and center and bringing out the standards.
Well, Gadkari ji he's already pulled out the whip.
Yes.
If there are no voluntary recalls, you want to face the music. So, Dilip sir, your closing remarks?
So the only way that the ecosystem will be developed is someone who's actually trying to get all the players together. So what is happening today is that the OEMs are doing their own ecosystems. The state governments are doing their own ecosystems, right? Invest India is playing their own role of trying to get people come into the country and invest. And you're actually looking at it from the elephant from different angles. It's like the 8 blind men and the elephant.
Films division.
No one is seeing the elephant as such, right? And I believe that there has to be greater coordination, and there has to be a huge, larger than the PLI scheme perhaps, an investment for technology in the future of mobility.
Absolutely. So Dilip sir and Dev both mentioning on the integration and the coordination aspect between state and center. I think that kind of puts its weight on it. Yeah, Samir, closing remarks?
I think it's very clear. Every stakeholder is important, and everybody has to play their role for this complete business and this complete change in the country. We need to understand we are having more than $100 billion already existing assets are there in the country. We can't ignore that. There are people who are living on those assets.
$100 billion of?
All the assets which is there in the existing assets which are on the automobile industry, which is already there. So we need to be understanding that cannot exchange with this is coming in. There we expect this should be additional to what is already happening around. There should be additional market space should be created, and every stakeholder should play their role to make it happen.
Fair enough. So every stakeholder, this is a a wake-up call for you if you're watching here or watching on WAF TV later, that we have to play our role. We have to be responsible towards our generation. As Dilip sir mentioned, we can't just look at electric mobility, just on electric mobility. It has to be a holistic, viewpoint. It's very important. It's very important what kind of world we leave for the next generation. Whether we want to leave our children, grandchildren wearing the mask not because of COVID or because of the pollution, 365 days a year, whether we want to leave them with clean air, as the adage goes that ours is possibly the last generation which can do something about climate change or reverse climate change. If you see today's Earth Day, if you see Google's doodle, it's on the effects, the havocs of climate change, how the the glaciers are just vanishing, how the green cover is vanishing. So it is a wake-up call, not just for electrification of mobility, but for sustainable, responsible, safe, green mobility. And I think we owe this to us, to our children, if no one else. If green mobility, ecology, renewable doesn't make sense, at least our children, our family, our next generation should make sense for us. So with that, it's a wrap on this panel. Thank you very much. Over to you, Anita ma'am.
Thank you, gentlemen. I think that was a very interesting discussion. And now I would like to call upon representatives from MG, Volkswagen, Focus Group and Abbott to please come forward to felicitate our panelists. And of course, the mandatory picture with all of you together. Please.